In a town where time seemed to stand still, not quite modern, yet not fully old-fashioned, lived a boy named Nelson. Nelson wasn't an ordinary boy. From a very young age, he believed that having money was the only way to be somebody in life. He didn't care where the money came from, whether it was from helping someone or stealing from them. Sometimes he would pick pockets in the crowded market streets. Other times, he'd sneak into shops pretending to be a helper, only to disappear with items in his pocket. To Nelson, having money meant having power, and he didn't care who got hurt along the way. One day, as he walked through the dusty street corners searching for his next opportunity, an old man sitting under a tree called out to him. His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. "Come here, boy," the man said. Nelson hesitated at first, unsure why a stranger would stop him. But something about the man's tone made him pause. He slowly walked over and sat beside him on the wooden bench. The old man looked at Nelson for a moment, then began to speak in a calm, steady voice. "There was a time," he said, "when 3 men ruled their world with money. Their names were Kelvin, Robbins, and Silas. They worked in one of the most powerful banks in the city. They wore fine dress every day, drove fine cars, and were respected by everyone who saw them. They weren't just rich, they were obsessed with wealth. Money wasn't just part of their lives. It was their identity. It was everything they lived for. But like many things in life, the success didn't last forever. One year, due to corruption and mismanagement, the bank collapsed. It shut down overnight, and the 3 men lost everything. Their jobs, their homes, their status, all gone in a flash. They went from luxury to poverty, from power to survival. And soon, they were just like any other struggling man on the street, hungry, desperate, and broken. Days passed, and things only got worse. They had no food, no shelter, and no one who cared about them anymore. Then one day, while sitting in shame by the side of the road, they were approached by a well-dressed gentleman. This man saw their suffering, listened to their story, and without asking for anything in return, handed them a large, heavy leather bag. Inside was more money than they had seen in years. Kelvin, Robbins, and Silas were shocked. They held the bag tightly, their eyes wide with disbelief. With trembling hands, they rushed home and sat around the bag of money in silence. They didn't even touch the coins. They just stared, each of them imagining what they could do with it. But as the minutes passed, something darker began to grow among them. Greed. Kelvin stood up and offered to go out and buy food for them. The others nodded in agreement, trusting him. But as he walked through the market, the excitement of having money turned into a wicked idea. He thought to himself, "If I poison the food and the others die, I can keep all the money for myself." He smiled to himself as he bought the food and secretly laced it with poison before returning. Meanwhile, back at home, Robbins and Silas weren't as trusting as they seemed. They sat close to each other, whispering in low voices. "What if we kill Kelvin when he returns?" Silas said. "Then we can share the money between just the 2 of us." Robbins agreed. Their minds were already darkened by the thought of riches. When Kelvin came back with the food, he acted normal, smiling, placing the bags in front of them. But before he could sit down properly, Robbins grabbed him from behind while Silas pulled out a kitchen knife and stabbed him. Kelvin collapsed on the floor, blood on his shirt, shock on his face. They thought they had won. Pleased with themselves, Robbins and Silas began eating the food Kelvin had brought. They laughed, making plans about what they would do with the money. But suddenly, Robbins started coughing violently. Then Silas clutched his stomach and fell off his chair. The poison had worked, just not in the way Kelvin imagined. Within minutes, both of them were dead. There, in the center of the room, sat the leather bag filled with money. And all around it were 3 lifeless bodies, Kelvin, Robbins, and Silas, destroyed by their own greed. The old man looked at Nelson. He didn't shout, he didn't lecture, he just said, "That is what greed does. That is what happens when money becomes more important than people." Nelson said nothing. For the first time, he looked down at his own hands, the same hands that had stolen, snatched, and lied. Something inside him shifted. From that day forward, Nelson made a choice. He walked away from the life he used to know. No more stealing, no more chasing money blindly. He decided to work hard, be honest, and live with purpose. Years later, Nelson became a respected man. Not the richest in town, but someone who was trusted, admired, and fulfilled. In his home, on a small wooden shelf, he kept an old leather pouch, empty. He didn't need it for coins. He kept it to remind himself of the story that changed his life. A story that showed him that what truly matters can never be bought with money. In life, money will always be necessary, but when it becomes your only reason for living, it begins to destroy more than it gives. Greed is a quiet killer. It starts small, in thoughts, in desires, but it grows fast and blinds the heart. It makes friends turn into enemies, and turns blessings into burdens. Kelvin, Robbins, and Silas once had everything: success, respect, and wealth. But they let their love for money become stronger than their love for each other. And in the end, it wasn't poverty that killed them. It was their own choices, driven by greed. Nelson, like many young people today, thought money could solve everything. He believed the fastest way to wealth was the best way. But when he heard the story, when he saw the end of those three men, he realized that a life built on dishonesty and selfishness never lasts. He chose a better path, and that path led to peace, to dignity, and true success. The truth is, money can buy comfort, but it can never buy contentment. It can buy houses, but not homes. It can hire workers, but not loyalty. It can decorate your life, but it cannot define your worth. Choose wisely, because in the end, what defines a person is not how much they had, but who they became in the process of getting it.